That being said, let's open it up for some discussion with the board, maybe. Well, Glenn, do you wanna start first on Zoom there?
Um, sure, I can. I mean, I'm probably the one who's least in favor of changing our present policy, precisely because I think our present policy provides us a tremendous amount of latitude um, to decide whether or not to grant waivers. It gives some pretty strong guidelines about what we might grant, but under the present policy, the board can decide not to grant a waiver to a house at 30% AMI if it judges that it's not in the current interest of the district. Um, but I understand that the majority of the board, I think, again, I'm speaking for the board, but is much less interested in waivers for housing above 80% AMI and would like to focus what monies we have on those projects at 80% AMI and below. Certainly the housing needs assessment shows there are over 400 of those units that are potentially needed, so there's lots of opportunity there. For myself, there's something very consistent about that. One is I've never been the biggest supporter of the housing surcharges. In the spirit of compromise, I agreed to them, but I've always felt that you're chasing paper losses. Like if you can't tell yourself that this project doesn't happen if I don't give this waiver, then you shouldn't give the waiver. We're not giving out waivers because they're good people asking for them, because they're all good people. But if you make the determination, hey, if we don't give out this waiver, this project or this organization is not going to either put this house in or next year's house if we charge them for this year's house. I don't want to get into the weeds. Then I don't honestly think there's an actual real world cost. The more we focus the waivers on 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80%. Once you move towards 100%, and certainly once you move towards kind of the development darling missing middle of 120 and 140%, that's basically lost to pause of houses that at those income levels, people traditionally pay their fees. So, Bill had circulated, and I think it's been circulated available to the public, a kind of a revision of our existing policy where we focus on 80% AMI and below. And I'm generally supportive of that. I mean, I have a few, I would like to emphasize the board should determine that the project absolutely requires the waiver. Because believe it or not, there will be 80% AMI projects that come, 70% AMI projects that come before us that don't require a waiver. There'll be projects coming where the developer actually has to build the affordables to get big density bonuses. So if a developer would say the right to develop 10 units gets the right to develop 25 units, if 5 of them are affordable, they've already gotten a big benefit. So the board can exercise a lot of discretion going forward. Again, that's my sense of the board, and if that's the sense of the board, then I can accept that compromise and that focus on 80% and below.
Thanks, Glenn. Some good points there, I think. Let's just go down the line. Bill.
So I agree with almost everything Glenn just said.
Okay, Matt.
I think that I don't necessarily want the board to have to look at the developer's spreadsheet to make a determination. I don't think that's a good use of our staff's time. I don't think it's a good use of our board's time. And I think that anytime we can help the 50% of our employees in this community who cannot afford housing without paying half of their income for housing. I think anytime we can help them, and like Glenn said, are most of these just paper losses? They're not going to get built unless there's help from the whole community. And most of these projects are getting help from the whole community, from the county, from the town, from not from LPA always, but sometimes. And so I'm more in favor of saying that if a project is qualified with a deed restriction of a certain period of time, and I put 25 years in the suggestion that I sent out. Glenn mentioned 30 years because that's normally what Jaffa and everybody asks for. And I think USDA is 33 years or something like that. So, you know, if we can see qualifications and I don't necessarily want to dig into the spreadsheets to say, oh, this one gets it and this one doesn't get it. I'd rather just have a marker at 80%. And if you're really doing that, which is almost impossible, as we have found, we're going to help, and so is everyone else. So,
without looking at the spreadsheets, though, how are we going to know that it's truly going to pencil out or not? I mean, you know, somebody's going to bring us some stuff, and doesn't somebody, whether it's staff or board or another consultant, maybe, how are we going to know? And I guess that's
know what
whether it's going to pencil out or not, whether, you know, because we've had that question come to us previously. And as I recall, I could be wrong, but when no waivers were determined, and I think we asked the developer, is it going to pencil out? And the answer was no. So then we went around the horn again and suggested something different. And as I recall, or maybe I don't recall, I don't know if that question was asked a second time or not. I don't know if staff does.
at Timberline?
Yeah.
Timberline. Yeah.
I think following the previous way we did it, so since not all their homes were below 80, they didn't get 100% waiver, they got something less than 100%.
Do you remember if we asked Timberline though, if whatever compromise we came to?
I don't recall, I'm assuming you did, because at some point they said yes.
Here's what I recall. We asked the question, is this project still gonna pencil if we don't give you these waivers? And the answer was probably not, but we'll come back. And when they came back, they said, okay, we can live with the compromise.
Well,
That's
also
what
remember they came to us, as all LIHTC projects do, and future LIHTC projects will ask for much more bulletproof assurances. And they asked for a letter of support based upon our then existing waiver policy that we would waive their fees. Now, when they came back, they came back after we had made the policy more generous, actually. And so the compromise position proposed by Paul was, no, we should adhere to the kind of the promise that we made in that letter, but that promise did not involve the recently, the waivers that were recently made more generous between 80 and 100. So the compromise position was to give them the waivers for the policy that was in place when we signed that letter, which that seems like a very credible thing to do. You can come up with all sorts of reasons why things change between the issuance of that letter, but those are just rationalizations. The kind of rationalizations we all, including me, use when we don't fulfill our word, quite frankly. And certainly I have sometimes in my life. But that's where that compromise came from. So.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anything else, Bill?
I'd like to hear everybody else. Sure. Moving on.
Just for the edification of everybody online and here, BJ, Bruce Jones is our newest board member and therefore has the least experience in water and sanitation, but he was on the POA board for a number of years. He was born and raised here. He's got a lot of history, for whatever history somebody your age can have. So would you like to hear other comments before you, or would you like?
I feel confident going now.
Okay,
Glenn, I do want to apologize to you, with the Oak Fire and all the stuff that we've had to deal with that in our company. You're the one person I haven't talked to. So I do still want to meet with you and, whether it be over phone or in person. But based on the information that I kind of gathered, from talking to everybody else, the primary thing I think that my concern is, and I think I took the same stance when I was on the POA board, and that is, without intentionally, I'm not intentionally trying to pat myself on the back, but without saying it, but our Mountain Land Disaster Mitigation both supports CDC and Habitat for Humanity. And I think that that is primarily the path that I lean towards taking in supporting individuals, is with my own time, my own finances, my own things like that. Now, I know we've had discussion and, as far as with each person, and it sounds like we're gonna have some compromise to that in our initial decision, but I think moving forward, I always want to kind of take the approach that if I want to do something, it's typically with my own time, and that's how I support things. I think when you sit on the PAWSD board or the POA board or anything like that, you have to look at every single aspect of what's going on. And I think one of the challenges that I'm recognizing right now, my biggest challenge on being on the PAWSD board is we're in the middle of water restrictions, which I think is obviously needed. I know there was discussion that Alex and I weren't here for that meeting. However, based on the qualifications alone, I don't think either one of us would have voted no. I think I would have voted that we need to move into restrictions. However, that also brings up Stevens Reservoir. I mean, Stevens Reservoir could, at least from what the research I've done, fill Hatcher twice. And we have no way to pump water from that to that. So, again, I think that moving forward, my fiduciary duty on this board is to make sure that we're in a position first where we can serve the people that we have as our customers, as our paying customers, first and foremost. And then as we have additional revenue available or excess, that we can begin to discuss this stuff. But right now, I think the primary focus needs to be focusing on getting, whether it's our gallons per minute we're losing down, and connecting Stevens to Hatcher. So again, those are my primaries. Like I said, I definitely look forward to next month's meeting so that we can make some decisions on this. But moving forward, it's just gonna be, that's gonna be my position. I don't think I'm gonna be pro 80% or a number. I think I'm gonna be pro, like, let's get our ducks in order. And then once we have our ducks in order and we can show excess, that we can decide at that point what we do support. But in the meantime, like I said, me, myself, my companies, everything like that, we do support the community. We do stand with the community, and especially for those who are under a certain AMI or are just dealing with life's difficulties. I mean, I was just at a place today, meeting someone, and we very generously deducted our bill because I could see there was hardship. So, that's how I do it though. And that's my best way to do it, and the best way I found to do it. So that's where my stance is. But like I said, definitely, appreciate everyone's time and efforts, and still, again, I will be meeting with Glenn, hopefully. I look forward to meeting with Justin and a couple of the staff as well, before next meeting, just so that I can better understand, but that's my position right now.
well, thanks, BJ. I guess I'm next. I feel similar, I think, but maybe for some different reasons. And I've said this before, I've been here so long that maybe I've got bad experiences, good experiences, but nevertheless experiences. And I'm not sure how many people on the board, current board, know or remember what happened about 25 years ago in Pagosa Trails and Chris Mountain. If you're a TV show aficionado, you might remember Eric Estrada. National Public Properties Incorporated or whatever hired him to come to Pagosa, and they took pictures of the mountains and said, it's beautiful, come and buy your piece of heaven in Pagosa Springs. A lot of people bought those lots sight unseen. Then later on, they came out here and saw all they bought was a rock, a quarter-acre rock maybe, with no roads, or if there was a road, it was a cattle path. No water, no sewer, no power, no gas, no nothing. So at that time, and now I'm a little weak, so forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, but I believe the then county commissioners, and again, this is 25 years ago-ish. 20. Please somehow put water into this subdivision. So the board and management at that time said, okay, put about $2 million of infrastructure into that area. And of course, the rules say as soon as you get within, and now staff correct me if I'm wrong, but when our utilities get within 100 feet of your property, your fee, call it what you want. Back then, I think it might have been a tap fee. Now it's a capital improvement fee, but whatever the name was, it became due. Well, now a piece of property with no roads and no nothing except water and sewer, the lots became worthless.
Availability fees.
No. Yes, availability fees, you're right. So people owed, Justin?
Availability fees.
Yeah,
Well, there would be two different ones. So there, if you're within 100 feet, there would be the quarterly availability fee, which is back then probably $1 and $2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Wasn't very much. It still isn't that much, but it was significant.
and then immediately they owed their tap fee.
But so we went and we ran all the infrastructure, and then we took our total cost and we divided that up amongst the lots that were served, and that was assessed to the property immediately.
Okay, so the bottom line. Is Glenn.
Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome. You're the man.
Let's get everybody.
And I'm missing.
Text Glenn right now, let him know, bro.
Interesting. All the notes.
All the nodes are back.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Hey, Cindy, you're back.
I have no idea.
I'm back.
And Terry's back.
We're waiting to see Glenn and maybe a few others that were on, so.
That's it. We have everybody that's on the, just with us.
And maybe just a poll or opinions, if this should happen again, another outage. Of course, I'll ask Glenn when he gets back on, but do we want to continue the meeting, or do we want to reconvene for another day, or?
In the idea of transparency in mind, I think we should, if it goes down again, we should, with the newspaper on there. I know Carl Young was on there. He reports on what's going on.
Where's the newspaper?
I thought I saw him on there earlier.
Maybe
Their
earlier.
phone number was listed up there.
So I think they can, with transparency in mind,
Okay.
I think maybe the future, we should at least.
Okay, there's Glenn in the waiting room.
In the future, when it's uncontrolled. If you're here in person, you're good. If you're not, we're gonna continue. I'm not saying it could be next meeting or something.
Yeah.
I think we actually declare that, but I mean, transparency, obviously, we all want to be at the forefront. But at the same time, I mean, it's like, something happens that's out of our control. It's not like we're gonna shut down a regular board meeting. Power goes out. Just saying, as far as the people here, I mean, they came,
Yeah.
their times were something too, so I'm just saying, like, you know, from that standpoint to
You got a
read,
point.
I mean, you have the choice. Carl Young lives here. He could be here, you know, and we have other staff, people like that that can communicate, keep limits. If the paper was to want something or something like that. So I'm just saying, maybe that's why you have the rules of meetings to begin with,
That's fair.
so.
Right, but my point was that you couldn't not continue in the meeting if that was the only way. My point was, why don't we explore whether we can get it started again? And it seems like we were able to get it started in 5 minutes. That's my point.
Yeah, and that's good points, good thoughts.
And I was just saying in the future, just if it happens, if it was to happen again, I think maybe we need to make some type of announcement next board meeting that, you know, when there's stuff that's out of our control.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Point, Glenn, or Bill? What, any
Oh,
further?
yeah, I agree with Bruce.
Okay.
Yeah.
We made
Well,
that-
you know, the town actually puts a little notification that, you know, you're invited to participate by Zoom. And we make our best efforts to make the meeting available by Zoom. But should technological reasons prevent that, you know, the meeting will proceed. I have no problem with the meeting proceeds. I just don't want to switch right to speakerphone when we could get it going in a more kind of traditional way in 5 or 10 minutes. And it seems like we were able to do that.
Especially if you have a board member on Zoom, but if we can get that board member on a phone line, that helps. So those are all, I think, very good points. So let me continue where I was. So again, I think, to be honest, I feel PAWSD is bearing a very unproportionate amount in by charging our customers a surcharge. Because, you know, in our monthly water and sewer bills, some people only pay water because they live downtown or whatever. But we're paying a little over $5 a month as PAWSD customers. They had no say-so in it. It was just the board who decided, you know, this is a worthy cause. And all that money collected goes into a pot, and that money can only be used for capital projects, if I'm correct. And any capital project is a project that costs over $2,000 or $5,000.
Well, it's, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's capitalized assets and capital projects. So you can also use that money to pay for
Okay.
capitalized assets.
And I see where you guys are coming from. You mentioned it before. This is really not real money. It's paper money or however you.
Paper losses.
Paper losses. And I think that in essence is true, but again, having been here for so many years and seeing what we call I&I, that's broken sewer pipes that water gets into, snow melt, rainwater that we don't want to treat, but it gets into the pipes, goes through maybe 4 or 5 sewer pumping stations out in the community, and then eventually gets here and has to be treated. Same with downtown. Downtown has I&I problems. Well, they're pushing all that water uphill to us to be treated. We don't want to treat Mother Nature. We want to treat what in the business is called sanitary sewer or wastewater. So that, I believe, is our core. And Bill, you're absolutely right. You mentioned it at our last meeting. It is fully lawful and okay for this and all water and sanitation districts or special districts, I think, to support affordable housing and childcare. Both super needed in this and many communities. So it's okay to do that. It's the board's choice, I guess, whether we should or not. And then, you know, I see like a half a dozen emails that we got in our last board meeting. And I'll just summarize them the way my brain does that. Several people said, and I believe this is correct, Renee or Justin, several years ago, contributions to affordable housing used to be voluntary.
That's correct. It was on the bill.
Yeah, you could say, I want $20 to go to affordable housing. How well that worked, I don't know. other people are saying, you didn't vote on this or nothing, why don't we have a say-so? And probably the best argument I've heard.
But that's false, Gene, right? I mean, why don't pass along abject falsehoods as if they're true. I mean,
What do you-
please. I mean, I was at the meeting. The community was at the meeting. We had 5 meetings. We put spreadsheets on the wall. So I mean, if honestly, the charges.
What should I do, Glenn?
Well, what I'm saying is you're citing letters and you're summarizing letters, a couple of which were really thoughtful letters that were trying to balance the cost and my personal situation. And quite a number of them were kind of Yahoo letters from people just making like the most ridiculous charges of corruption and financial impropriety. And this was sprung on us. And there were no open public meetings, and we have no idea where this money is going. And I mean, it's a lot of nonsense in those letters, and you're passing them along as if in total they're legit criticisms. I was there at all those meetings. We've probably not discussed an issue in public with the same degree of kind of openness and even contention as we have affordable housing.
Well,
That might be a reason to say let's move it to the side because we're spending too much on it. I get that. But if you're placing a lot of credence in 80% of those letters, you're way off.
Well, I
I don't like being.
And if you would have let me finish, I think you would have understood where I'm coming from a little better. Probably the best one came from a gal. I live in a trailer park. I live alone, on a fixed income, blah, blah, blah. And the way I summarized it was, it's not PAWSD's $5 a month, but you add PAWSD's $5 a month onto La Plata, Black Hills Energy, and all the other things that are happening, eggs, gasoline, insurance. Now that group of money is now maybe $100. So I see what she was saying, and yes, you're absolutely right, Glenn. There was some rather silly accusations made in those letters, which I threw aside immediately. But several of them are saying that. And then in my talks amongst the community, as recently as this morning, I'd have to say 80–90% of the folks I talk to, regardless of their income level, regardless of how long they've been here, are not in favor of the affordable housing surcharge. And and they give me a number of reasons. I won't get into that. I feel that, and a couple of people have said this to me as well. Why can't we get more development in this community? Why can't we fill Cloman Boulevard? Why can't we get other companies to come here? And I know there's a whole bunch of reasons we can't. I get that. Maybe having a better airport and better highways and all that stuff. That's what when corporations come in here and say we're interested, and we say, well, we don't have this, we don't have that, then we don't look so good. And I sat back and I looked at why can't the county help more? Well, you've got a dump or a landfill that you got to be thinking about. You've got an admin building. You've got some big projects coming online. I would say the same with the town of Pagosa, a failing wastewater system, many millions of dollars in the next few years to fix that problem. And then you've got, the other stuff that they should be doing. PAWSD, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but I think in 2027, we have Reg 31 that's going to hit us.
We're not sure
We don't know.
exactly when CDPHE will decide to add that to our permit. Our permit was, I applied for the discharge permit renewal for Vista January 31st of 2024. And, so the state goes to approve those, they go by regions. And they'll approve like this region, and then they approve like Pueblo, and then and it goes around. And they had just been in our region in 2023. So it's a cycle, and the estimate that I got from our compliance person was 4 to 5 years from when I applied. We would get our new permit. And if they've decided to do anything with Reg 31 within that time period, it may hit, it may not. It may not be till the next one.
Is it safe to say that one of the reasons our wastewater capital investment fee increased dramatically with a capital D this year is because we are anticipating Reg 31 in the future? And we're trying to collect money up front and be somewhat prepared for it?
Yes, there is an amount in that rate study for Reg 31, an estimate. I don't remember exactly what that number was, but that was a part of the money needed to be collected in advance of not only the current Vista upgrades, but also Reg 31.
And I mean, Reg 31 is a whole nother discussion. I mean, is Reg 31 gonna hit in a couple of years? I don't think so. I think it's gonna get held up in the courts for better part of half a decade before it moves along at all, because it's not, you look at 85 that we just got hit with. I mean, we were one of a couple districts that got hit with that. 31, correct me if I'm wrong, is gonna hit everybody. And I just don't see that being pushed through in a short time frame. I think it's gonna be, Glenn and I have talked about this, and Glenn has a lot of knowledge on this. But it's gonna be like a lot of EPA mandates, a lot of things that they have this goal, but achieving that goal is gonna cost so much money for every community that I do see that being pushed on the back burner, so.
But remember one thing in Colorado.
That is true.
For instance, the EPA mandated the new lead and copper rules. And all the states denied it except for 2, Illinois and Colorado.
Okay.
Which costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And we don't have lead in this here. It still costs, but Colorado and their infinite wisdom said, let's still make them do it. So we have a state that wants to.
Again, that's a regulation that could cost a couple of $100,000 a year. The application of Title 31 might cost us and every other similar community $100 million. So it's almost like CAFE standards. Colorado hasn't gotten ahead of the delayed CAFE standards and said, hey, all cars have to get 75 miles per gallon, because you can only get so far ahead of the country. I mean, in our capital investment plan, we're assuming, I think 2034 was the date that we assumed. And that's an open question, and I would like to revisit it. How much are we making the person building a house this year pay for a projected cost that might hit 9 or 10 years from now? And are we better off having a more modest fee that is covering a lot for Reg 85? Are we better off when it does hit actually having more customers to pay what's going to be the biggest revenue bond in the county and the community's history? But that's a different question. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One is, let's be clear, there was talk about the infrastructure out in Chris Mountain, and that's kind of that's an important piece of our history, but we didn't spend $1 on Timberline's infrastructure. And we're not spending $1 on the infrastructure for habitat or any kind of affordable housing we might choose to support. They have to pay every dollar for that. In fact, for Timberline, we gave them a punch list, which we didn't do for like 99% of projects, of essentially very large ticket maintenance items where they had to go with root intrusions and pipe misalignments. And so they actually, I don't know what the final number was, but $120,000 of system improvements. So, and going forward, they pay every single, again, to address some of these silly charges in the letters, they pay every single dollar of their bill. They get no discount on their bill. And if they're in a very small home, they probably pay by far the highest per square foot cost for water and sewer. And the other thing with the surcharges, I keep coming back to whether you regard it as a paper loss or a real loss. If you regard it as a real loss, you can't get rid of the surcharges for 2.5 years, at least not on the wastewater side. If you think we are really $559,000 in the hole, we have to either continue to collect that for 2.5 years to make good on that, or we have to raise our customers' rates next year to start making good on that. So just keep that in mind when you think, is this real or is this kind of a paper loss? And my last point is the $16,000 roughly CIF that we're dropping on our customers was not an act of God. That was, to some extent, not all extent, part of it's state mandate, but part of it was our own doing. We kicked the can down the road for 13 years. We kept telling ourselves, Reg 85 is never really going to be pressed on us and applied to us, and we kept our wastewater fee at $798 and $800 and $912. So a lot of people complaining, and I get the complaints, paid a CIF of $900. And then I won't go into the whole details, but Reg 85 did not have to be applied to PAWSD if we had been honest and transparent in our dealings 15 years ago. So it didn't, to some extent, the reason we're being asked to give so much is because we charge so much. I mean, that's reasonable. I mean, the county doesn't have a $16,000 road fee. The town doesn't have, they used to have impact fees, they got rid of them. The town doesn't have a $7,000 park and rec fee. So they're coming to us, whether we give discounts or not, is pretty reasonable. I mean, I would counter with the county if we have to give up, if these projects are so important, I feel they are, and we give up $25,000, why can't they give a 25-year tax exemption? So I think Gene's right on that score, that, you know, there are other entities that could be contributing. The town was given essentially $3 million per decade by its voters, and then was recommended by its consultant to collect from SDRs, and it said, nah, we're not going to really collect that. Okay, so I get Gene's concern that other districts really aren't doing as much, but
well, those are, I think, some good points, but let me finish and then let's get to Alex for sure.
okay.
I can see where you're saying these are paper losses, but to me, every dollar that's not paid by an affordable housing project, once it comes to fruition, that money should be used for fixing infrastructure. So that for instance, right now we have a huge project in Lake Pagosa Park on a lift station, and we've got other, water issues and other sewer issues. Those issues, those projects aren't going to get done as fast, and they should be, because we're trying to keep our own house in order, but they're not going to get done as fast if we continue to give waivers, which, once again, I can't support these projects enough personally. As a board member, I have difficulty. Alex?
Yeah, so I think, we got two separate issues here that we're discussing, which is, do we want to continue to support affordable housing? And then do we want to have an affordable housing waiver? I think the waiver is tied into the rate study. So if we're going to continue on the path, we're going to use the current rate study. If we're going to change the path, I feel that we have to get a new rate study done. I do agree with Glenn. It's a paper loss. A lot of these projects don't happen. For example, Habitat, I don't think happens at all without some incentives. So, but I just have a problem with charging that $5.42 onto a bill. People get their bill and they're paying for water and sewer, and then they see affordable housing on there, and it doesn't make sense to me. I think that we've all kind of have a consensus here a little bit that it is kind of ridiculous that that's on the bill, and that there's other ways that could be handled. if we wanted to do it going forward. But I want to see that off of our bill. Our ratepayers are not coming to us for affordable housing. They're coming to us because they want water coming out of their tap and they want their toilets to flush. That's what we do. It's kind of boring. This affordable housing stuff is much more fun to talk about, but in the reality, it is an extra component of this organization. It's not part of our core mission statement. So I like the idea of restructuring EUs in the long term more than I like giving away specific waivers. I can understand what Bill was saying earlier about anything under 80% AMI. I understand that. I feel that we can get into a lot of situations with that would not be beneficial. For one, I mean, for example, like with CDC, I don't necessarily have a problem with CDC. I have a problem giving 5 more waivers when they can't sell 5 houses. But then do we give out, if they come and ask us for 20 more waivers, but they're under 80% AMI, do we just blanket approve them? And then those lots maybe get sat on for 5 times. I don't know. So I do think that because it's not our core purpose as an organization, I do think we need to look at them on a case-by-case basis if we're going to do that. No waivers under 80%. I mean, I think that's
Or 80%.
over 80%. Yeah, no, only the rich people get houses. And I do think that different organizations bring different benefits to the table and could affect us differently. And I think Glenn mentioned it earlier, and I agree with him. There could be 80% AMI projects that come into Pagosa that we're not going to make that difference of whether that project happens or not. And in those cases, I think the best use of our resources as a water and sewer district is to collect those revenues and pay down our debts. I can work towards a compromise, but the idea that we just have to blanket approve anything under 80% to me, I think is a little dangerous. And that's my personal opinion, although I do completely understand where you're coming from. I just don't agree.
Bill. Good conversation. So PAWSD has over the years arranged fees to serve certain purposes. And I think I sent a note to Gene about this, that back in 2001, 2002, PAWSD got really serious about conservation, water conservation. And we created a tiered rate structure. And that served a purpose. And the purpose was to have water for everyone. That was the purpose. So it was self-serving in a sense, but it was a way to say, this person's going to pay this rate, this person's going to pay this rate, this person's going to pay this rate. For their luxury, they will pay more. PAWSD did that, and the water use dropped 30%. So we had to up our rates for everybody because nobody was buying water.
So did every city in Colorado.
And so did every city in Colorado. So we had to deal with that situation. But what my point is that just because we're we need revenue to make the system run, it doesn't mean everybody should be paying the same amount.
I agree with him.
Now, I think there may be other ways to do things other than a waiver. There may be ways to say, if you're at 80%, you're going to pay this. If you're at 100% AMI, you're going to pay this. If you're at 20%, 120% AMI, you're going to pay this. I mean, I think there's ways we could structure this in the future so that we really are supporting the kind of housing that we need most. The apartments, I mean, the kind of housing that we need most, that we are supporting that by adjusting our rates instead of saying everybody pays 16,000. Oh, this project is going to pay 5. This project is going to pay 10. This project is going to pay 50. So I think that needs a rate study, and it needs a board approval that we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis. a housing crisis. We're in the middle of it. People can't find ways. People can't find places to live. They're living in their cars. They're living in the forest. We're in a crisis. And if we all don't come together to deal with that crisis, we're not going to have an economy. We're not going to have anybody paying PAWSD to take care of their lines because we're not going to have a town. I mean, it's not that serious, but it's heading in that direction. So I'm totally in favor of getting rid of the surcharge. I would do that right now, but we're not going to make decisions tonight. I would say get rid of the surcharge, admit that it's a paper loss for some cases, and then get a rate study done so that we can tier the CIF the way that we tier the water charges. And for now, however, the rate study will take 6 months at the rate things are going. You know, and that's what they typically take, 6 months.
I mean, it's about give or take 4.
We do have an organization in the audience that felt pretty sure that we were going to waive these fees based on an existing policy and had been waiving fees for several years, and they paid the fees expecting to be reimbursed. I would strongly urge all of us to honor that belief that the organization had that we were going to waive those fees after they have already paid them and reimburse them. So that's one of the things I want to have on the agenda, definitely at our next meeting, is reimbursement of fees that were paid with the understanding that we had a policy and that we were going to follow that policy.
That brings us 2 questions in my mind. Timberline has already paid theirs as well. And they're asking for a refund.
No.
They're asking for a reduction in their monthly rates.
I call that a refund.
It's
Well,
totally not in our policy. Totally not in our policy.
I agree. And, you know, when Rose Mountain came in, it was said that we won't get another project like this for many years. We did, not too long after that, just a few years after that, we got another one. And now another one, and now the 93 acres across from McDonald's and the view that wraps around the elementary school, and Lord knows how many more we're gonna get. The board, whoever it is, when all this comes to fruition, is gonna have some tough decisions. And, you know, how do you say yes to someone and no to somebody else and, you know, continue the surcharge or get rid of it? That's gonna make a few people happy. We just have to, in my mind again, and it's been said before, what's our core? It's water and sewer, and we are, and I think I have to agree with Glenn. Part of this is our own problem, not the sitting board, but maybe previous boards. And now we've decided, and I think rightfully so, even though financially it hurts, but we have decided to take the bull by the horns, act as responsible as we can. And that means these rates have gone up, the capital investment fees and monthly water rates. And, you know, the question just keeps on popping up. Whose responsibility is it? I'm not so sure it's the Water and Sanitation District's responsibility. And even if we didn't have our water leaks and our I&I and our own house was in order and we could drop our fees as much as we could, I still believe whose responsibility is it? You know, the fire department, like I said, they're waiving affordable fees. But the people who are at whatever, 81 or 120 or 121%, they're not waiving those fees. So they're making the people that just can't, what's the word, meet the qualifications for your programs. Those people are being, I think wrongfully, whatever the word is,
Yeah.
assessed. So it, you know, this is a huge, huge issue, but to me, it's kind of simple.
Yeah, but you know, it is our responsibility. Again, it's not our principal responsibility to provide for economic growth or to provide affordable housing. It's also not really in our mission statement to crush affordable housing. I mean, we've made choices. Those choices result in a micro 250 square foot studio with a 4 by 5 foot 9-inch bathroom being charged the same $16,000 that a 6-bedroom house is charged. We've made that choice. Okay, so that's our responsibility. I would suggest that, again, I'm a big supporter of waiving fees under 80 if the board member, in his or her own mind, believes that the project doesn't happen without the waiver, because I don't see a cost there. But, you know, and I don't know exactly where Bill is going, and I'm willing to hear him out on the AMI, but to me, that sounds a little bit too kind of spreadsheety. Like we're really going to have to get into people's personal spreadsheets. But I don't see why we couldn't look at our fees.
Josh Pike. I'm sorry, Glenn, we just saw somebody that needs to be let in.
Oh, okay. I don't know why we couldn't look. Obviously, we can't provide the same density bonus that we do on the water side. And there are fewer complaints on the water side because we hand out screaming deals. But you know, there are a lot of other districts that charge you half a CIF for a studio, 6/10 of a CIF for a 1 bath, like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and then a full CIF for 2, 3, and 4. And then you have to pay an extra quarter, an extra third of the CIF if you go with a 5 and a 6. You know, and that's one way you can make it more affordable. And then, quite frankly, when you go to waive the projects you really like, which are like the smaller apartments, you know, you're waiving a $6,200 fee, and it doesn't quite hurt as much. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Well, Bill, I wanted to address, so I liked what you said, you know, kind of staggering the EU charges based on the size. I mean, I don't want to get into like a socialistic approach to it. You know, I don't want to penalize the rich. But if you've got a yard and you've got half-acre yard that you've got green grass in, and you're going to use more water, you're a bigger burden on our infrastructure than say a 250 square foot apartment. So I do like the idea of that. But I do want to get back to, in 2024, we did not give out any waivers. Is that last year, correct? Or we put a pause on it until the new election. I think we did give out some waivers in this last year. And then we decided as a board, before I was on the board, before I was appointed, that we were not going to give out any more waivers until the new board, and they were going to decide.
2024.
Right. And so at some point after this is when we.
Okay.
Following the May 2024 board meeting.
Okay. So, I mean, and I agree with where you were going with Habitat for Humanity, but it was a gamble because we did not say we are going to start giving out waivers in 2025 again. We said the new board's going to make that decision. So, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but there should not have been an expectation this year. Now, am I still willing to work and try to make some compromises and get us a better, straighter path forward that makes more sense? Yes, but it was not guaranteed. It was a risk that was being taken. And all of this is in the gray area. I mean, we're not talking about something that's our core mission statement. So all of this is gray. I think that's important to say. I don't think that there's a straight yes or a no on this. There's a lot of gray area in here. We have the ability to do it, but it's not required by us, and it's not part of what we do. So
Something Glenn said, I highly agree with, but I think maybe, in my opinion, it's 2 separate subjects. you're paying whatever, $16,000 for a studio, I think maybe is wrong, and maybe we do need to revisit our fixture count and the way it's calculated. So a studio, like you said, is paying, 5/10 of an EU or whatever that fraction is, Glenn. And I think that's a not even necessarily a compromise. It's probably just something that needs to be done. But continuing to give, totally separate subject, continuing to give waivers when we could do other things that help that demographic that we're trying to help, that seems to me to be a better route to take, more in line with our mission statement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think we could find a way to balance making it fair for everyone and at the same time making it more affordable for LIHTC and low-income housing projects and Habitat for Humanity and CDC by restructuring it. And instead of giving discounts to certain people, saying yes to these people, saying no to these people, if you want to come in and you want to build an 1,100 square foot 2-bedroom house, you're not going to pay the full 16,000. Or if you want to build a bigger house, it's going to be more of a draw on our system. You pay more. I think we could get away from the waivers in the future and get away with the surcharge and just go to a more fair. And we're never going to have a fair way of structuring the rates. Right. It's never going to be 100% fair. Right. You've got 7,700 customers. You can't make it fair for every single person.
But Glenn's logic is so true. A studio where 6 of them would fit in this room, maybe 8 of them would fit in this room. Why should they be paying the same thing as a third vacation home that's 7,000 square feet? That's just wrong. So I like that concept, and I think there's reason to relook at that, which again will undoubtedly take a new rate study.
But just to be clear, and that targets one part of the market, and it's kind of an important part of the market if you look at the demographics, but that's not helping the working couple making $35,000, $40,000 a year with 2 kids. They're not in that studio. They're in the 2-bedroom house or the 2-bedroom house with the garage, which is going to become the 3rd bedroom in a few years, that kind of thing. So, I think there are different issues because those different approaches to CIF will actually help the private market and give the private market a much fairer, fee when they want to put in a set of studios 1s and 2s. That will reduce their CIF. Since we're discussing CIF, I think we should take a strong look if we just do let's say we do a rate study, and because of the interest of time, we say we really want to focus on the wastewater district this year. And we can take a look at the water district where, however the numbers move around, we're only projecting 3% rate increases for the next decade, which is incredible when you consider we just built a $44 million plant. But I would like to see the number where the CIF is paying for the next 10 years of infrastructure, their share, and their Reg 85 contribution without Title 31. I don't know how much of Title 31, whatever it might be, whenever it might be, we want to pull in on the person building a house this year and next year. Because even if we collected $500,000 a year, this is not like Reg 85, where if we had collected $400,000 a year, we would have had almost 40% of that compliance in the bank. We can collect all we want. It's only going to be 5% of what Title 31 is going to impose on this community if it happens. So I'm not sure I really want to beleaguer the construction of new homes with charges which probably are going to hit, but we don't know. So I'd like to get 2 numbers. This is the CIF if we just do infrastructure, Reg 85, debt service for the next 10 years. And this is if we pull in a certain amount of banking we want for Title 31. I'd like to see how those numbers look. Myself,
BJ's got a comment.
So I'm actually genuinely excited with the rate study and stuff like that, and I look forward to, seeing that information. I also think though, we have to ask the question, who owns what? Because right now, if we give, and I'm not saying, again, I look forward to the rate study, but right now, if we give the cubicle studio that much of a break, that means a 3-bedroom home is gonna get hit harder, which is the average of this working class that everybody's talking about. And the fact of the matter is all these low-income housings are owned by somebody who has enough money somewhere or access to enough money to build that many. So I do think you have to realize that when you give that much of a break to the studio, yes, you help the developer. But I know no one in the working class that we're talking about, or that anyone out there is trying to help, that I've heard, that's doing a studio. So I think you gotta be really careful when you do this rate structure or with this rate study, that you also go into who owns it. Because again, if you go in right now, if we just went with everything that's been discussed in this particular instance, you would have to say studio gets a break. Then you would probably move to whatever's next. Then you would go to a 1-bedroom home. By the time you get to a 3-bedroom home, which is everybody we're talking about, how many people do you give homes to that don't have kids?
Not very many.
Not very many. So all that I'm saying is all you're doing is taking the exact same people that we're talking about, and you're giving the break to the guy who we love him, we need him, but can afford to build a 50-unit complex. I don't know that anyone sitting at this table has the affordability to do that or even thinking that way. We need them, but I think that we've got to be very careful as we move forward and how we move forward, because we are also need to contemplate ownership versus just existence.
Just say,
Yeah. Jane?
I couldn't agree more, and I alluded to it earlier. And I even alluded to it in previous board meetings. Everybody who's, sits on a board of directors, I look at it as kind of like a balance. If something happens, tornado, earthquake, whatever, it gets out of balance and there's a lot of things to repair and fix. Somehow you got to get it back in balance sooner or later. And if, just like you said, BJ, if we give some developer who's coming in and he's going to build 100 studios, because that's what, these guys don't do it because they're not smart. They've done their demographic studies and they've found property that they got for a good deal, and it's got to pencil out or they're not going to do it. So he's going to put in 100 or 10, or, pick a number, studios, and then they get waived for whatever reason. What does that do? Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, what does that do that the person's at 119 or 120 or 121%? That balance, maybe not financially, but that balance is kind of leaning pretty heavily towards affordable housing and not leaning maybe where it should towards almost affordable housing. You see what I'm trying to say, Bill?
So Pagosa Housing Partners did a survey in 23 of working people. And 75% of the respondents were single or were a couple. So we're not necessarily talking about a working population that has 3 kids. There are families out here that are working that have 3 kids, but 75% of the people who work in this town are single or a couple. So just throw that into the mix, that the housing that Habitat builds is at 80% AMI, and a lot of the families that can afford that have 2 working parents and maybe a couple of kids. But it doesn't necessarily serve 75% of the workers in our community. And I'm concerned about them as well as the families that have a couple of kids. I mean, they're all important. But if, don't be afraid of helping, build small places. Because that's what most working people in this town need, a small place. They need a 1-bedroom or a studio. They don't need a 3-bedroom house. And that's just the data that we collected. So just keep that in mind.
And I agree 100%. I just would say, I wasn't a part of that. I lived here in 2023. I didn't hear any of my guys say they were a part of that and they lived here in 2023.
We got 400 people.
I understand, but there was 400 people. There's thousands of workers here. So again, I'm just saying that I want to put clout into that, but to say that as a number of matter of fact, that was the matter of fact of the people they picked. I don't know where they went. I don't know what they did. I'm not disgruntled at the fact, but that does not mean that that is the actual fact of Pagosa Springs as a demographic because you've picked 400 random people. I think that's great. Again, I think my whole point wasn't it's who owns it. Because of that 75% you're talking about, they're not gonna own the studio more than likely.
No, they're not. They're gonna rent.
I understand. So I'm saying that ownership plays a huge part into who we want to give a break to. In my opinion, it has to. Because as hard as it is to say, because I've been on boards that go out and get grants, do stuff like that. I will tell you right now, and I think everybody in the audience who gathers grants would say it is 100% harder to go try and get money from our government than it is to come before a boss board and get it instantaneously. And if you get that discount from a local entity that says, hey, I'll give it to you, that is that much less that I have to go try and milk out of them. I'm not saying milk in a negative way. I'm just saying like it is literally like milking a goat when you're trying to get money from the government. You don't get very much. So, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't mean the money's not available if we don't give it. It just means that more work has to be put in. And I don't want to belittle the efforts of our local people who are trying to service this need in the community, as you're pointing out. But I also want to, again, I think that you have to get into ownership at some point, because why would you, I mean, you're talking about penalizing Habitat for Humanity. If a board ever comes up that says, yeah, we're going to redo this rate structure and we're going to give huge breaks to the person who's going to build a 50-unit complex over there, then 2-3-bedroom houses have to go up. There's a balance of scale there. So in essence, you're punishing the very people that we're clouding for right now in the same discussion. And I'm not saying that means we don't do it. I'm saying let's get a rate study. Let's do what we need to do, but somehow let's tie in who owns it to that so that we're giving the people who truly have the need the help, and that we're actually utilizing, because that's what you're saying the whole time. We need to help the people who need it. And all that I'm saying is the guy, I'm not saying he needs it or not, is the guy who can afford to even consider building a 20, 30, 40, 50, 150 unit thing, the person who needs the help the most? That's just the question.
If I could just add one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm done.
Oh, just, Alex has noted the mission statement. I think that's very important. But I think it's important to realize that when we're operating in our different business enterprises, our mission statement is to operate like a business. Now, it's difficult to do as a government. But, when you're deciding based upon the occupancy of units, like if you were paying the bill, right, and you were going to try and collect the money as a business, you wouldn't, and you had 50 apartments, you would not charge the same price to the person in the 289 square foot studio with the little bathroom as the 4-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms. If you were operating as a business, because you would realize, it's kind of a science. If you look at the planning documents, even for Timberline, it's down to a science. So there's a certain occupancy, and every occupant, we all produce a certain amount of BOD, and it is really pretty bulletproof, that science. So I don't think if we move to a system where a very small living space with 1 bathroom, and the number of bathrooms is not that important. The most important thing is the number of bedrooms, which leads to occupancy, which leads to BOD. So there's nothing unfair about charging one person a certain price and a unit that can support its capacity, 6 people a higher price. That just as a business proposition. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree. I think the question is are we talking about fairness right now? Or are we talking about how we move forward in a way that honors supporting the people that need the help?
Yeah.
I think you have a good point, Glenn. As long as we stay on the capital investment fee subject. But as far as, and maybe Renee or Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe state law requires that whoever gets a service, i.e. water and sewer every month, has to pay the exact same bill. I've read that before, that all customers have to be treated equal, not on the CIF. But if you get water and sewer at your house and I get water and sewer at my house, and I happen to live in a small subdivision and on 1/8 of an acre and you're on 5 acres, but we both get the same service and you've got 4 bedrooms and I've got a half a bedroom, we have to be charged the same amount. Is that correct?
Unless there is a reasonable basis for the justification to charge.
Like a disparate, well, disparate is more of a,
But you do have
No,
to be very careful with it because, you can be challenged on that if you do have a lot of variability.
but
That's not.
not true on capital investment fees.
Any.
Right, but-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we've changed our calculation of monthly fees from a bulk rate to an individualized rate. And if you look around the state of Colorado, I mean, there's a whole, that does not prevail across Colorado.
Well, people who get water from the fill stations are a different type of customer than BJ is at his business or his house. That's all I'm saying is we just have to stay within the confines of the law, which I don't think that's gonna be a big deal because we're talking about impact fees and the rules are different for impact fees.
I think you're right.
That's what I read anyway. Any more comments from the board? Thoughts, ideas? And again, there'll be no decisions made tonight, if any, are to be made.
Do you wanna see if there's comments in the audience?
Well, we have a little time left. I think we could.
I would love to hear
Sure.
what the audience has to say.
Emily?
So, in listening to you all talk today, I realized one glaring thing that Habitat and I have failed to do to help you with the waiving of the fees, and that's to tell your story better of the impact that you have made because you have waived these fees. And we had a conversation today and we both agree that we feel like we need to come up with a one-pager so that you can circulate this to the community and let them know what a great partner you have been and how it has impacted this community. I can tell you the 5 houses we've already sold, these people would not still be in our community had they not found a place to live. They would have left. And so we want to try to avoid that. So we would like to offer that up to you, that we will put the data together and the information together. And if you would like to circulate it or put it on your webpage or whatever you would like to do, but we know the impact that you made by making that sacrifice. Number 2, I think that I would be willing from the economic development lens to help you to develop an application process for those people who don't want to pay the workforce housing fee, that they could apply if it's income driven. We can do it that way to have that fee removed from their monthly bill. Because I guarantee if you survey our lead employers in the community and the other people that work here that know how hard it is to retain employees, they are happy to pay it. They need that housing so bad. I agree with Bill, we're in a crisis. We lost 4 teachers last year in 2024 who were hired in May And by September, they could not find a place to live. Both inventory is down and affordability is up. So we are in a crisis. Our school district can't retain, our hospital can't retain, our county can't retain. I'm sure you guys struggle with retaining as well. You have a lead leaving here soon, and I'm hoping and praying that you really get a good qualified person. That's a big pair of shoes to fill. I also think that maybe we could survey your members or participants, customers, and see if they're in favor or they're not. And actually get to all of them, not just the 5 that complained, but people that are on a fixed income should have an application process that they could have that fee removed. And we just take it out of the collection that you're collecting, so that we do a yes and. This housing crisis is also not gonna last forever. Please, please don't let it last forever. You're right, Pagosa is becoming more attractable to multifamily projects. However, there are so many hurdles to get over when you're a multifamily. This organization is just one of them, and that is to be decided by this board. But it takes a long time for a multifamily housing project to get through the process. Whether it be the sketch fee at the planning department, either county or the town, and the neighbors don't want the development or whatever. There's so many different layers that people back out of doing the housing before it even happens. So as much as we'd like to plan for the future, it's so uncertain. It's very uncertain. The projects that you have in front of you are happening right now. And they are producing, and we are getting them on. If I could address just one more thing, sir. Alex, I just want you to know that House Member 6 has gone under contract.
Awesome.
We also just now are getting those houses listed on the MLS. And we have done this organically from the beginning, so that we could target the people that needed to be in those homes. We have done a bang up job getting the right people in there, and that's who we were building for. I can tell you that in our 2 3-bedrooms, we have 84% AMI. Those people had down payment assistance from both CHAFA and the Homes Fund, and they were able to make that work at an 84. They don't fit into her program, but we were able to keep them in the community because of what you all have done. It takes every piece when you're building workforce or affordable housing. The county has put up money, the town has put up money. There has been land donated for this cause. I can tell you the fire district is waiving their fees on both of our projects. This is a community collaboration project. Everyone is helping to get these houses into the market so that they can keep employees. Thank you, I appreciate you.
Thanks for your comment. Appreciate your comments too. A couple things come to mind, and I disagree with you in one respect. I think you both did an absolutely superb job with your PowerPoints last week. You guys are overachieving, efficient, wonderful programs that you manage. So I don't think I need any more information. I can't praise you any higher for the work that you do.
I don't think it wouldn't hurt to have. And yeah, I would agree with him that excellent presentation. I knew like half the people that were in there. The 2 of the Habitat families that I knew, went to school with a couple of them. So that it was very cool to see. And like I said, I'm willing to try to find a balance here. But I think that the way that we've gone in the past, I just can't continue with it in the future. So
And I think Bill said it too, and I couldn't agree more. We have a housing emergency here. So does every city in Colorado. We're not unique in that respect. I know some people who live in Durango, the only thing they can afford is a rat-infested, drug, alcohol-infested little tiny community. That's all they can afford. And even all of those are full. And then, last week, some spreadsheets were put up on the board and I didn't see it, but Alex said he saw one of the rental houses downtown was being, and I don't know how many bedrooms it was, and it's an apartment, $1,750 a month.
I believe so. I believe that gentleman is not here to defend that though, so I don't.
Yeah, and it was Peter, and I wish he was here, but even if it's $1,500 a month, that's why I'm an apartment guy. These folks, even if they're, a couple parents working jobs with 2 kids, again, you guys can't do any better job, but your houses are still 320, 300,000. And if people aren't able to meet that, to me, well, maybe we should see if we can get some apartments
Well,
available for them for the first 2, 3, 4 years. Let them get on their feet, and then let's get, home ownership is boom.
Anybody else out there?
Let me finish. Is the best thing we could ever have in the community is owning our own home. But it does come with a cost. Last thing, I liked your idea of maybe, Emily, of having maybe employers pay that fee. Thinking outside the box, that's beautiful. Anybody else with comments?
Yeah,
Leah?
I do want to ask if you guys had any questions on the letter I sent on Friday, but real quick, I do feel excited about the conversation about basing it on square footage with the caveat of AMI level 2, because we do build with larger families that would have more bedrooms. But I feel like basing it on square footage, price per square foot isn't something we talk about a whole lot in affordable housing, because we feel like it incentivizes builders to just build bigger. If all the tap fees are the same and they add, I don't know, a few thousand square feet, all of a sudden that price per square foot looks really good to your buyer. So the idea of increasing your rate for larger homes, I think would go a long way, and it would make our for-profit local builders in town, they would be able to access the lower rate. They would be incentivized to build a little bit smaller, maybe, organically more affordable home for our community, and then could get in at a more affordable place, starting point, if they had a lower tap fee, and then they wouldn't have to jump through the hoops of it could be for the spec home builders, and they wouldn't have to jump through the hoops of doing a deed restriction, before they even break ground. Because I remember last May, when the rates first went up, we talked to a couple of local builders that were interested. We partnered with Signature Homes one year and built them a 10-year deed restriction. So we did have a couple of builders come in and ask us about that to try and meet y'all's requirements at that time. So I think there's definitely an appetite for, a tiered SIF model.
yeah.
Thanks for
And
your comment.
And if I'm not wrong, just to kind of keep this business-like, and I'm not a successful businessman, but I play one at PAWSD. If you look at the per unit cost of these apartments, of not only like Timberline or Rose Mountain or even market apartments, they're far, far higher than the prices that these ladies are bringing single-family homes, at least, Leah and the 2 bedrooms at CDC are actually bringing into the community. So it's the per unit cost of apartments is also, sky high. And from them, as opposed to a LIHTC, there are so many knock-on effects. You're not going to see property taxes like from the single family home that PAWSD will get and the county will get. There's a lot of economic development, and this is outside the box, but one of the reasons we have a crisis in school funding is precisely because we don't have homes that people with children can afford. And our crazy school formula cuts us a check, our community, for every kid we can put in a school. So,
A lot of gray area.
yeah, but I think it's wonderful that you can build 2 and 3 bedroom homes cheaper than 1 and 2 bedroom apartments often, and you should be commended for that.
Lauren has a question.
It's not a question. I wonder if I might just say a word or two. So first of all, I'd like to really sincerely thank all of you, directors, for your time. This is a difficult problem to address. And I appreciate the thought that's going into this and the consideration. Because it doesn't matter which decision you make ultimately, to some of the folks, it's going to be the wrong decision, and to others, it's going to be the right decision at best. So I don't take it lightly, and I don't take it without knowing where you are. But I am going to say this. Director Charges, you had mentioned that you felt like PAWSD has paid a disproportionate amount in supporting, let's just call it attainable housing. And I can't disagree with you in that the $2 million outlay to run the water out into trails or Chris Mountain 2. But one of the things that I recall hearing in Emily's presentation last week was, with the work that's been done out there through grant money and through partners, it's setting PAWSD up for a big revenue income that you have not had before. And so in essence, this validates you as a group going out on a limb to put this water in. The time has come now that there are users, there will be ratepayers, there are ratepayers. And so this is no longer a water pipe to nowhere, if you will. This is something that's real and it's happening. And I know that last week's meeting, we had talked about, and Gene, you and I even talked about personally, that these monies will come via the rates, but we'll probably be dead when they get here. And such is the burden of a decision maker. You're making decisions that likely you will never see the result of, but your children or your grandchildren will, because that's what leaders like you do. They set in a vision of what's to come. It's just like when we start our retirement accounts, we start putting in $1, we don't see $1 return the first day, the first month, the first week, sometimes longer. But after many years of working, we see that investment over time coming in and paying off. And I know that one of your policies is that if it has a positive effect for PAWSD, you can consider that. I would suggest that this most certainly has had and will continue to have a positive effect on PAWSD, and it will generate revenue for PAWSD. And just like PAWSD has put in, I know the county has put in, well, first of all, we've donated 66 pieces of land, which has a pretty significant value. We have put in guarantees of money in other ways that it's quite a bit. And this is a county issue. This is a community issue. And we often get people that come in and ask us to help with community issues, all of us, and in any of our daily walks of life. It doesn't matter whether you're on a board or not. And while it's not our responsibility as a group, I think in my mind, it's a responsibility as an individual, just like you were talking about, BJ, and where you put your time and your effort into supporting these groups, building a habitat home, which I've been on several, to help, because it's worth it. And I know that the coffee shop where we talk and we meet, today there's 7 people. We continue to not hold ourselves accountable to making this community better. Next time we're going to go, it's going to be 2 people, 3 people, or it's going to close. Because the fact of the matter is, we cannot run a community without people. And while it's not any individual or any governmental entity's responsibility to take this on alone, a community partnership is appreciated, and you've been great community partners. And to that end, the last thing I'll throw out is I had the chance to talk to our local DOLA rep. I was at a meeting last week in Delta, and he happened to be there, Patrick. And we were talking about attainable housing, and he was asking how it was going. And I said, we're kind of struggling with some fees, and we're trying to get waivers. And I don't know if you guys deal with DOLA a lot, but I know that one of their considerations quite often is, do you partner with affordable housing? And I know you have. And if you change the policy, will it Will it require that your response to that question going forward with DOLA will be no, we don't? Not that I wouldn't understand, a lot of infrastructure needs. But what is it going to cost us? What is it going to cost PAWSD, the user, on the back end of no longer participating at the same level that you've been participating in? I mean, the residual effects that we all feel from having workforce housing and from not having workforce housing have been incredibly high. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate the position that you're in considering this. And if any of you want to meet offline at a different time, I'm happy to give you my 2 cents. I know, Alex, we've talked about it as well. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I just wanted to add one last thing. One of the things is I know Len and Bill both kind of clarified some of the stuff about the waivers and how that impacts you. It's more of a paper process. I know last week's meeting, it was getting a little confusing. Almost felt like you guys were paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars to make these projects happen. So I appreciate that. And one of the things I feel is missing those, we're not talking about the income that you're receiving from the additional customers. You know, when you add that LIHTC project, you're not collecting those fees up front, but you are getting that monthly. So how do you is there a justification there for those additional monthly fees? And the Commissioner Brown, I appreciate you bringing up the infrastructure at Chris Mountain, because that was on my list as well, because that added 166 lots. Sorry, 168 lots. That's all got the infrastructure now that can become paying customers a lot easier than they could before. So just like you to consider that. How could we weigh that benefit?
Thank you. I appreciate all those comments, and I know we're getting close on Bill's time where he has to leave, but just a couple of things that come to mind. And staff, please correct me if I'm wrong. The monthly amount that we pay for water and sewer service can only be used for salaries, insurance, electricity, gas, things like that. It cannot be used to build a new reservoir or a new this or that or the other thing. It pays for services. Our water division, if you want to call it, is an enterprise. So absolutely, yes, as Glenn said, it's got to act like a business, and it should, both water and sewer. But the monthly water bills generally have to pay for the service you're getting, not
The growth.
I don't, I mean,
It can pay for debt service.
oh yeah, I mean, a big part of our water and wastewater bills are paying for revenue bonds. Massive, I mean, on the water side.
Let me rephrase it. I think the water bills can pay for, and again, I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize. You've got existing, which is all of us here in this room, and then growth. Is it growth's problem that the water lines are old and leaky? No. It is all of us existing customers that use them. So some of that monthly water bill does have to go to infrastructure. But when we charge a new user, developer, whatever, that CIF, that I believe all has to go for their impact today and in the future. They're buying into a system. You know, I've been paying a water bill for 47 years. And then Justin comes in and wants to bill, why do I have to pay that? You know, so we have to realize how our budgets work. And then the other thing, and you know, maybe I'm wrong. Again, I've been here for so long. I have different opinions. Lake Pagosa Park, where I live, I believe was platted in 1972-ish. One of, if not the first, subdivision in this uptown area. What is that? Almost 60 years later, still not built out. It's about 80% built out, and it's probably the highest percentage built out subdivision in the uptown area. I would argue that we will probably see the same thing in the trails and Chris Mountain. I hope not. I hope grow a little faster, but, just due to the fact that you are having a little difficulty, thank God you've got 6, another one under contract, but there's a little difficulty because, well, what do we get? Do we get a house or do we get eggs and gas and electricity and bill?
And just wanted to touch base on an idea that, yeah, there are grants out there. And we've gotten grants from DOLA. You've gotten grants on your end. When the community comes together and PAWSD supports a project, and the county supports a project, and the fire district supports a project, and you apply for a grant, that looks good. So if we make a decision, we're gonna pull out, we're not just hurting that amount of money, but we may be hurting the ability for people who are trying to do the right thing for our community to be able to get grants. So that's another piece of our obligation as part of the community to help support the grant applicants by saying, yes, PAWSD is one of your partners. The fire district's one of your partners, so forth. So, I mean, that's just another thing we need to keep in mind. Because we have supported things for 5 years. We've been supporting people with waivers, and there's been some big grants come into this community, and we've played a role in that. So just keep that in your mind as well.
The things I haven't seen, which I would like to, and I know maybe it's an unfair question, we pretty much know how hard Habitat and CDC have worked, and even got a spreadsheet from you, Leah, showing everything you've done. And I suspect the county couldn't answer right now what their contribution has been over the years to affordable housing. You probably have to get with your financial people and look at the spreadsheets and all that.
If you
stuff.
wanted specific numbers, I think that's accurate.
I would like to see that, and same with the town of Pagosa, again, because I truly believe that's more in your realm than it is in ours. Should we be a partner? Probably. But it's not water and sewer. And I would like to see some figures. So, so company X or public entity YZ have only put in that much, but thank goodness the fire department's doing something, and I think we're doing probably more than anybody. I'd like to see those numbers, because otherwise it's a guess.
Yeah.
To me.
Could I ask for a number?
Sure.
No, I mean, it was no secret. I'm generally supportive of the CDC project for reasons that have already been stated, and I can't pull together better. But I'm a little bit flying blind on where they are right now. So as I go forward, we had approved 8 at 80 and below, and then we gave 100% waiver for 80 to 100 because we were so impressed by that 8-2 mix. So I would like to know, like, of the 6, including the one that's closed, where are we on that AMI scale for each of those? And what is the projection for the other 4? What AMIs are they're going to hit at? If they don't hit at 8 and 2, listen, I understand it's a difficult environment, but I need to know just how close to that promise or projection you guys think you're going to get in phase 1 before I can consider phase 2. And phase 2 has already moved to a 3-2 mix, which means we're moving closer to 100%. So I'd like to see those numbers. And just for my fellow board members, just think seriously, because I go back and forth. It's not an easy business decision. How real do you think these losses are for projects at 80% and below? And if we're losing revenues, quote unquote, that we would never receive without the waiver, is that a loss? And just when you think that through, it then doesn't attach to a lot of 10 other legitimate infrastructure concerns that have been outlined very well by the board. But just give that a little thought. That's what I'm saying. And let that run around in your mind a little bit, and it might disengage from all of the other issues we have. That's all. And it might not.
Well stated, Glenn. Thank you.
getting back to wanting to know what everyone else is doing. I know, I think as the Commissioner Brown said in the meeting the other night, you've been meeting to death lately. And, I understand that feeling, probably not as well as you. But would it be beneficial to maybe quarterly, if we're not making any decisions, if we continue to move in this direction, would it be beneficial to have maybe a PAWSD board member, a commissioner, town council member, all the other people involved, CDC, Habitat, sit down, not every week, once a quarter, and talk about what's going on, what's coming up? Because I feel maybe more communication could alleviate a lot of these problems. So I don't want to keep creating subcommittees on top of subcommittees but Bruce could be on the subcommittee. But
Expect to be nominated on September, in September.
But I mean, would that be beneficial to do quarterly? I mean, something to think about. So that we're all on the same page and we understand what the needs are. And if we're gonna work together as a community, that instead of this person and this person and this person and this person all voting separately and having their own agendas, we could collaborate more as a community and maybe find new solutions. Don't know.
Well, and I think we all agree on several things. There is a housing crisis in this community. Whether it's worse or not as bad as other communities, I don't know, but we all agree that we should be doing something. Who we is, we might have slightly different opinions, and how much each we should be doing. That's why this subcommittees are meeting and talking, and that's kind of why I called this meeting. I did not want to go into September 11th not having this conversation. I think we owed it to all of you to have this conversation. Again, no decisions are going to be made, but boy, have we brought up, I think, some good ideas, some things that maybe need a little more research, maybe get some more numbers. So in September, when we walk into the room, we're just a little bit smarter than we were last month. That was my thinking. And Glenn, I know this has been a little tough for you because you're juggling your plans and stuff. And I really appreciate you doing that.
Oh, well, I actually enjoy these meetings just because I miss Pagosa so much. So.
Well, I have one last comment that I'd like to make, and then I'll shut up for the rest of the night. Is Cindy is going to be doing our budget this year with the assistance of Erin. Cindy's been with us for a while, but she is new to some of the tasks that she's going to be taking on this year. And I do think if we want everything to run smoothly, we should wait until any potential rate study until after the budget is completed before we even dive too heavily into that. If that's the decision that's made for the purpose of keeping our staff, that would be next year. That
If you want to do a rate study next year, now's the time to let us know. So we add in budget.
Yeah.
I think
But we don't want to start on the rate study while we're trying to do the budget. I don't think.
Yeah, we did budget for rate study.
I think ChatGPT could do it for us.
Oh.
I actually do want to say something, and I
Hit him on the head.
I just want to make sure. No thanks. Anyways, said hit him, I hit myself. I just want to make a point, and I don't think it was meant to be that way, but this is not a comparison. This isn't what do we do versus what the PLPOA do versus what does the county do versus what is. Guys, we are all community members who want the better for tomorrow. And whether the decision made by this board honors what might be perceived as someone's better view of tomorrow versus somebody else's. I think that was one of the discussion points last meeting. And it was, we all want that. We all desire that. So I don't want this to come across, but I also heard your question, and I don't think it was meant to be this way, but I heard your thing of, I don't know that anyone's contributed as much as we have. That's not what it's about. The decisions that were made in the past were made for a reason, and we want to support and honor those as a board, because that's what we do. I mean, I was on PLPOA, and even when I was the no vote, if the board made a decision to move forward in a way that even I disagreed with and made my voice known, I supported it from that point forward.
Absolutely.
So we support the county, we support Habitat, we support CDC, we support the town, we support La Plata, you know, and it's not about who does more or less. It's about how do we move forward from the point we're at. So I just want to make that very clear that this isn't a comparison. It's not a, anybody did more than the other. It's where we are right now. How do we need to move forward to first and foremost, as Alex has pointed out numerous times, honor what we need to do to make sure that we're providing for the clients that we have, but also secondly, and again, somebody could argue even equally importantly is how do we support our community? So I just want to make that known.
All that being said, Bill,
I have to take off in 4 minutes.
okay,
Should we adjourn this meeting?
yeah,
I think I'm talked out.
I think I am too. Unless there's any other short, public comment, I think we'll adjourn the meeting and express, I think I can speak for the whole board, how much we appreciate you coming here, giving your opinions, whether we like them or not, or love them or don't. We just appreciate you being here because in September, some decisions are gonna be made. I don't know what they are, but we're smarter because of you, and thank you.
Motion to
A
adjourn.
motion to adjourn,
Second.
so moved. Thanks.